Now do stay with us here on TVC News. Coming up, the desperate plight of Rohingyas fleeing persecution in Myanmar again comes to the spotlight. We have details when we return. You're watching TVC News. Some Rohingya Muslims have held the global media to account on the inadequate coverage given to the Rohingya crisis ongoing in Myanmar. Two Rohingya Muslims were given the spotlight at the 2019 GSF, during which they made an emotional appeal for education of Rohingya children at Bangladesh's Cox's Bazar refugee camp. TVC's Bukola Samuel Mimo is in Dubai and our reports.
The Vaki Foundation, at the 7th edition of its annual Global Education and Skills Forum, drew global attention to the plight of more than 1 million refugees from Rakhine State who are denied citizenship rights by the Myanmar government. Hamed Ullah and Zainab Amani are Rohingya who have escaped the persecution in Myanmar and are now resident in Canada. They share their own stories while at the Cox's Bazar refugee camp in Myanmar.
As soon as the school starts, we have to do the prayer. Since the majority of Burmese peoples are Buddhist, so they do the Buddhist prayer as a Buddhist ritual. So, as my mother told me after the school start, when there everybody is praying, and I was sitting down quietly, and suddenly my teachers come behind me and she pushed my head onto the floor. And I was scared. I was so shocked, and I look at her, and I said, I was look at her shaking, and my teacher said, "Oh, why don't you bowing?" And I said, "Because I'm a Muslim, and we don't bow to anything other than God."
People like you have no father, and your mother is mentally ill. What's the purpose of the education? What are you going to do with it? So we cannot waste this resource that we have in this institute for you. So you should get lost and try to survive as long as you can.
Speaking further during an interactive session with journalists after the opening plenary, both Rohingyans emphasized the need for education and enlightenment as long-term solutions to the Rohingyan crisis.
Your basic human rights, the right to live, the citizenship right. The report didn't say much, asking too much the Burmese government. The next day what happened? They attacked the Rohingyans, and more than 720,000 people fled overnight into Bangladesh. The world is not acting on that. So I want to ask the world is, how long are you going to let this genocide happen? When Rwanda happened, everybody said, hey, never again. It's happening again, and it's happening for past 40 years. When is the world going to realize that never again is happening again?
Since the independence, the Burmese government has been feeding lots of hatred, Islamophobia, and they don't like us. So that's why people hate us, and we need enough education to respect each other. And we would like to, our Rohingya people, we love other ethnicity too. We're not asking for give us a land, no. We want to live peacefully, but we have to get our own right.
Ullah and Amani are speaking in defense of the rights of more than 700,000 Rohingyans who have fled to neighboring Bangladesh and those at home still suffering persecution. Who's listening? Bukola Samuel Wemimo, TVC News, Dubai.
And Bukola Samuel Wemimo now tells us what to expect from this year's 2019 edition of the Global Education and Skills Forum holding in Dubai.
It's a beehive of activity here at the Atlantis, Dubai, venue of the annual Global Education and Skills Forum. The closing plenary has held this morning, and the sessions are continuing. Of course, there is a session dedicated to presenting the EdTech Prize for a startup who is putting together innovations on education technology. Let me quickly brief you. From last night, there was a concert held in honor of teachers at the Assembly Grounds in Dubai. That concert was closed to the press, but of course it was an interesting one where there were hungry fund seekers, many of them delegates, and of course others from Dubai who just came to see the first of its kind concert held to honor teachers from around the world. There were artists like Rita Ora and Lauren O'Reilly. And moving back to today, let me quickly brief you yet again that the main high point of the GESF is the Global Teacher Prize. There are 10 candidates, the top 10 finalists from different countries of the world: Australia, Japan, the Netherlands, United Kingdom, Argentina, not forgetting Kenya. Many Africans that I have interacted with throughout the 2019 conference are rooting for Peter Tabiji from Kenya. Peter is outstanding as a science teacher who dedicates 80% of his income to help students from the Kibera slum in Nairobi, Kenya, to get an education. And he has outstanding learning outcomes. Some of his students have gone on to win national competitions in Kenya and are representing that country at the international level as well. But there are other candidates to look out for. Yasodai Selvakumaran, he is a nationally recognized teacher in Australia. She's a Tamil-born Sri Lanka whose parents went to live in Australia, and she has helped train over 200 teachers in Australia. These are some of the teachers who have been lined up to win the Global Teacher Prize this year. So that event is coming up this night, and it'll be interesting to see who emerges the winner this year. These are some of the high points. We'll bring you up to speed with more events coming from the Global Education and Skills Forum.
All right, TVC News, Bukola Samuel Mimo, giving us updates from Dubai. Now,